Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Path of Exile Skills. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the new Kalguuran skills. This one is called Triskelion Cascade. It's pretty fun. I'm going to be honest. I sat here and I played with it for a while. Giggity. And it's just a really fun skill. Basically, what this ability does, it says tap into the power of the Triskelion Flame to empower the next cascadable spell you cast, and the empowered spell becomes the center on your location and cascades to 6 areas around you in a Triskelion pattern, which is really freaking cool. So when you utilize it, basically what happens is you get the ability to scale, essentially, that Triskelion Flame quite a bit. In fact, let me, I need some more Varicium Nujank so that I can actually cast the spell, because I switched one of my pieces of equipment, which is kind of an important thing that you need to realize, is that you can't actually cast the spell unless you have the appropriate amount of Nujank. Not really sure. How much am I going to get from this? 161? Wow. It's actually kind of high. Okay, whatever. It's just a resistance, like, pair of gloves anyway. Alright, so now we have enough Runic ore where we can use it, and I'm going to utilize it with my ability known as Bone Cage. This character is currently set up for Bone Caging. So as you can see, Bone Cage is normally just simply a circle, and I have some, like, cascading stuff going on. So I'm getting, like, a second bone circle. However, when I use Triskelion Cascade, you can see that I get much larger and a lot more bone cages than I did before. And you can, of course, recast this as many times as you have the Runic Ward to do so. There are a lot of abilities in the game that functions with Triskelion Cascade. I've played around with a lot of them. So, like, one of the things I actually did was I just sat here for, like, a while, and played around with tons of abilities to see what could Triskelion Cascade and what couldn't. And some abilities that you would think could Triskelion Cascade actually couldn't. And some abilities that you would think couldn't actually would. Some of the more fun ones, though, were things like Frost Nova. Frost Nova was a really cool one, or Ice Nova. Ice Nova has a very, like, crazy pattern. It can also get just kind of ridiculous in terms of, like, the size of it as well. So as you can see here, we get, like, the massive amount of Triskelion Cascade going on, so we can get all the bonuses. On top of that, you can also grab, if I remember correctly, Frost Bomb, which I don't have a Frost Bomb on me real quick, but let's go ahead and grab one. Frosty Bomby, Bomby Bomb Bomb. Bomb, bomb, bomb. It's a frosty, frosty bomb. The reason why we're going to grab Frost Bomb is because you can, of course, get these infusions, and the infusions increase the way that it works, right? So if you have an infusion and you cast your Ice Nova, you can see you get a much larger Ice Nova. So let's check real quick and see if the Triskelion Cascade can get that effect when it cascades. So let's go ahead and grab 3, which is the base limit for the total number of infusions. And let's go ahead and Triskelion Cascade. And so the initial one is getting the infusion, but not all the subsequent ones that come out from it. But as you can see, like, it's definitely a very interesting pattern. Now, I went through the process of testing, like, a lot of these, and I can kind of go over with you, like, which ones actually worked and which ones didn't, and why some of them worked but were kind of limited. So the problem with some of these is that they have a limit on them, and so when you cast them, they can't surpass that limit unless you have, like, bonuses that increase the limit. Frostbomb is one of them. So if you utilize Frostbomb, you'll notice that even with Triskelion Cascade, it still only casts 1 Frostbomb. However, if you have an increased limit on Frostbomb, which you can do in a couple ways, the Gemini Legionnaire has plus limit. I think it's the Stormweaver also has a plus limit passive in her Ascendancy, and you can also use things like Overabundance and whatnot, which can also help with this. Let me see if I have an Overabundance in here right now. And we're going to go ahead and put 1 Overabundance in Frostbomb. And I'm going to Triskelion Cascade. And it doesn't seem like we have enough. Yeah, we do have the +1 limit. I played around with it and I wasn't able to get it to work, but only with a couple of them. Also, some of the abilities, like Firewall, as an example. Firewall doesn't really work with Triskelion Cascade because there seems to be a hard cap limit on the way that it functions. And of course, I think it's Flame Wall, not Firewall. I'm getting the names like slightly wrong. It has a hard cap limit on the total number of like instances that you can have. You can only have like 3 instances of Firewall or Flame Wall on the battlefield. And then what happens is if you have more than 3, it just deletes the original one. So like for instance, if I put say like 1 over here, on this side, and then I cast 3 over here, you'll notice that the other one disappears immediately as a result. If you utilize it with Triskelion Cascade, it does the same thing. So it casts the initial ones in the center, and then the 3 on the outside immediately cause the 3 in the center to disappear. So you don't really get the like full effect of it, but it does work with it. And you know, there's so many spells that do work with Triskelion Cascade. You really have to kind of like go through them and play with them and see which ones actually work effectively with what you're trying to do. And of course, you can look up like Cascadable spells, which I believe is usually termed as repeatable. So skills that are repeatable, that are spells specifically. So let's go to like the spell category, like elemental. There are repeatable spells in here, like Frostbolt says that it's repeatable, right? So let's check Frostbolt and let's see. So let's put Frostbolt in here. Let's put our Triskelion Cascade on, and then we're just going to. And as you can see, it doesn't seem to work with Frostbolt. Not every skill that is repeatable works. Not every skill that's cascadable works. In fact, there are limits. Well, specifically, there are limits. Some skills actually have limits that prevent them from being cast in a large amount. Like, for instance, Volcano, I believe, could potentially work because you can sort of like cause it to cast multiple versions. But I'm pretty sure that as soon as you use it, it just does the Triskelion Cascade thing. Where it has its limit, and so this one is active, so you can't cast anymore. As soon as you cast another one, it immediately stops the other ones from casting. Even if it could, you would have to increase the limit. I do think Triskelion Cascade's a very interesting ability, and as long as your ability can benefit from having multiple of that particular spell active, then I think it's pretty useful. I played around with a whole bunch of them skills, and I just sat here for like I don't know, like a while, and I was just playing around with everything. Like I tried Thunderstorm, I tried, let's see here, because I have most of them in here. I tried Unearth, that didn't seem to work, I don't think, but we can always recheck it. Unearth is kind of like a, yeah, it's like a straight line attack. Not really sure why Unearth doesn't work, but you know, whatever. I also tried, I'm pretty sure I tried Tornado. Let me double check. Tornado has a limit on it, so we'll put Overabundance in there. And we'll check it with Overabundance. As you can see, we still only get 1 Tornado. And then we can check other things. Like, I tried all the orbs. None of the orbs worked. I also tried, of course, I tried Ice Nova. I showed you that one. That one's really good. It doesn't work with Frostbolt. I don't think it worked with Frost Wall. I'm pretty sure I checked Frost Wall and it didn't work with Frost Wall, but let's double check it. Yeah, so it doesn't work with Frost Wall either. My assumption is that if you have an ability that can be cascaded, obviously. So if you grab the Cascade gem, which is like Spell Echo or Spell Cascade, and you try and put that into the skill, like, does it work, right? So, like, can you put the Cascade ability into the effect? And if you can't, well, then it most likely isn't going to work, so you can test them this way. But even after this goes in there, you still need to check and make sure they're actually functioning properly, like Flame Wall, which obviously doesn't function properly. Let's see some other ones that I checked out. I did Bone Cage already. That was actually pretty good. The crazy thing is Frostbomb, of course, is cascadable. When you go to put the spell cascade ability in here, it will cascade. So you can see I get 2 of them, but one of them immediately cancels out the other. If I throw in Overabundance, you'll see that I can have 2 of them active, but the middle one disappears immediately. So in this particular case, if I cast with Triskelion Cascade, it doesn't do anything, even though I am getting multiple things. So not all cascadable skills, because Frostbomb is definitely a cascadable skill, seem to work with the Triskelion Cascade, which is a little weird. Comet definitely works. I should have mentioned that earlier because I know Comet's a pretty popular one. So if you use Comet with Triskelion Cascade, you get a very beautiful pattern like this. Pretty cool. Allows you to pretty much like hit the entire screen with Comet, which makes it really powerful. In fact, if you were doing a Comet build, I see absolutely no reason for you not to utilize this for clear. It may not be, that great for bossing specifically, but if you're, like going into a clear build and you hit that, you run into the middle of a pack and just go ahead and boom, and then just smash the entire pack with as much damage as possible, which is pretty nice. You can also utilize things like Magnified Area, which I noticed in general does actually very strongly affect how it works. Because each one of the comets is spaced out essentially in a specific pattern based on the size of the effect. The size of the effect changes depending on how you have it set up, right? So like if I'm utilizing Bone Cage without, you see it's kind of small, and then I use the Triskelion, and it gets to be larger. If I utilize the Magnified Area with it, and I use Bone Cage, you'll see that it hits a much larger area. Conversely, if I utilize something like Concentrated Area, which is a much smaller effect, I was pretty sure I had a Concentrated Area here, but let me just go ahead and grab one. I know I have like 1,000 that I've already made. If you use Concentrated Area with it, what you'll notice is that it becomes smaller, and you end up with a much smaller Triskelion pattern that covers much less of the screen. It seems to be because when you're like the spacing of the ability is designed, it seems to be designed around the spacing of the actual ability itself, like the size of the Bone Cage, similarly to the size of like the Comet. So if I use Concentrated Area on the Comet, you'll notice the same thing, is that the Comet has a smaller impact, and when I go to cast it with Triskelion, it has a smaller area that it is then hitting. So there is some actual technical stuff here that you can play around with, and I would assume that stacking as much area effect size would cause skills like Comet to hit a much larger area and essentially like clear the entire screen, allowing you to get multiple Comet hits that do massive amounts of damage. It doesn't look like there's a lot of overlap on them though, so unfortunately you're not going to get like a lot of hits on the same target, but I mean it's still pretty nice. I've also tested the chance to echo, and let me just go ahead and grab some. Of course there's none in here. Let's grab some gemmy gems, so gem cutters. We need some gem cutter prisms. Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and beef up Comet. Now, Comet has an interesting ability where it has a 10% chance to echo. So does the echo have the ability to echo with the Triskelion, like pattern, right? So it's an interesting question. So let's do the Magnified Area in here, and let's go ahead and hit it a couple times, and let's see if we get the echoes. It's only a 10% chance, but we can hit it a couple times and see if we get any echoes at all.
I'm not ready yet.
Still not seeing any echoes. That was just a single. There's an echo on the single. Let's try it again. 10% is not really a particularly high percentage chance, so maybe we just aren't seeing it, but let's keep trying a couple times and see if we see any echoes on the... I kind of thought I saw an echo there. It seems like a lot of the additional cast from the Triskelion are kind of cut off from some of the bonuses that you're putting in there, so they're not really like fully beefed up versions. To put this into perspective, like if you're using something like Spell Echo or Spell Cascade or something, right? If I use Triskelion Cascade with Spell Cascade, you're going to see the Spell Cascade ones will fall separately from the Triskelion Cascade ones, and the Spell Cascade ones have specific things that are going on with them, right? In fact, I could even throw in Echo as well, so we could throw in an Echo, and yeah. Need another slocket, so we can put that in there. So let's put in Echo, and then you can essentially have like a massive number of spells all going off at the same time. So you've got the Echo spell, you've got the Triskelion, you've got the Spell Cascade, and it just makes for an absolutely ridiculous, like, spammy Comet, essentially, right? Of course, every one you put in there to, like, echo the spell is one less that you could have for damage, so it's up to you whether you want to do that. But if you're just looking for like something that can just clear the screen for you or freeze a bunch of monsters, it certainly sounds like an interesting choice. I mean, between all the different options that you have for Triskelion Cascade, there's definitely a lot of fun stuff that you can do with the ability. What support gems would I recommend for Triskelion Cascade? Well, there's only really two that I would recommend. Number one is efficiency. It has to do with the cost of the spell. So if you don't have efficiency in there, one of the things you'll notice is it costs a lot of Runic Ward. It's like 190 Runic Ward per use, and that brings it down to a nice 114, which is a lot better. So you can get multiple Triskelion Cascade casts in a row. And I also use Rapid Casting too. Rapid Casting too is nice, just so there's less like time lost in having the ability function. And I believe I also used, which is missing from it for some reason, but that's cool. I can always put it back in there. Let's just double check that it works first before I say for certain whether it is on there. I'm pretty sure you can put prolonged duration. Yes. So prolonged duration is just going to give you more time essentially to utilize your ability. So as you can see, it says buff duration 6.48, and this one is 4.8. So it just gives you a little bit more time to actually cast your spell, so you don't lose the effect of the Triskelion Cascade unnecessarily. Because technically, you know, like if you don't cast it quick enough, then you lose the buff, right? And 4 seconds is not a lot of time, especially if you're trying to line up a shot or you're trying to get yourself into position, or if you get interrupted. Like in the middle of your cast, you might need to cast a second time, right? There's extenuating circumstances. So putting in things like efficiency 2, rapid casting, and prolonged duration can help you there by decreasing the cost, making it so that you can cast it multiple times. Rapid casting 2 makes it so that you have a much easier time casting it, and you don't have to worry about not getting the cast off. It just makes it smoother in general between the cast and the secondary cast of the ability, right? Because you're already casting 2 abilities. Just make it faster. Prolonged duration, of course, makes it so that you have more time, so that if you cast it, you've got a little bit more time before you have to use the ability, which gives you just a little bit more of an opening. I don't really think there's anything else you would really put in there. You could throw in just like the generico, chimerico, supports, but for the most part, I think that's pretty much it. I have a lot of fun with Triskelion Cascade. I've been using it with Bone Cage, which is a physical damage skill, and I like it. I like it a lot. As always, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you are enjoying the content. And as always, keep watching.